I'm not able to be there with you at the business show today. However, my wonderful colleague Claudia will be standing in for me and presenting my talk on working from home, the good, the bad, and the ugly. In this talk, we will run through some of the questions I get asked all the time about managing a remote workforce. I hope that you'll see that there are both challenges and advantages to going remote, and that this will help you decide if remote work is right for your team. I hope you enjoy it, and it's over to you, Claudia.
All right. So thanks everyone for being here. Thanks to the Business Show for giving us this platform to be able to talk to you all today. My name is Claudia Buckley. I'm the marketing manager at GoSkills. And so, as Bob mentioned earlier, she wasn't here able to make it. Um, she's our CEO. But we are really here to talk today about the good, the bad, and the ugly of working from home. So before we get started, I just want to ask, is anyone here probably managing a remote workforce? Like totally remote, everyone works from home or remotely, there's no office. Yeah, so we have at least one. Is anyone managing a hybrid where some people work from home or sometimes, cool, nice, we have a few. And is anyone thinking about some version of going remote or going hybrid? All right, not yet. Oh, we have someone in the back. Nice. So that's what we're sharing today. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history of GoSkills as to why we're experts on this topic. So we were founded in 2013, about 9.5 years ago. And from day one, we've been remote. So for almost 10 years, we've been remote. We'll tell you a little bit about how that got started and the lessons that we've learned along the way so that if you are thinking about it, then it'll help you decide if it's right for you and your team. I'll leave about 5 to 10 minutes at the end for any questions that you have, and hopefully we'll be able to answer that. We're also going to go through some questions that we get asked all the time about managing a remote workforce, and maybe that'll help you. So first of all, it got started when Bob, who you saw earlier, back in 2013, she wanted to take an online course. And she went online and she noticed that the quality wasn't that great at the time anyway. So she thought there was an opportunity to maybe be able to offer these courses online. And so with the other co-founder, who is Franz, she got in touch with him, she knew him before, and she said, why don't we try to publish an Excel course? Because I was looking for an Excel course online, and it wasn't that great. What was being passed off as courses? So they found a Microsoft MVP. He was living in Canada. He agreed to create the content. Franz decided to do the technical aspect, that is to build out the platform so that, this content could be shared online. And Bob kind of worked on the sales and marketing aspect. And that's how GoSkills got started. Because afterwards, we saw that there was even a greater need for other types of business courses, project management, Lean Six Sigma, and so on. And then we reached out to other instructors in the same way. So it kind of happened organically that we were able to find people who were all over the world being able to provide this type of content. And none of the team actually worked together in the same space. So that's how it happened. The tools that we use include Slack. So right now, the team has grown. We have about 25 full-time employees, but we're distributed across basically every continent. So we're in 14 countries, and that means that we have to kind of work through a lot of unusual situations, which I'll go through in this presentation. We don't use emails internally. We do have email, but we use it mostly for external communication. All of our activity collaboration takes place in Slack, and our project management takes place using Trello, which is really great for sharing and moving and collaborating with each other. We use Google Drive to store our data, and we do use the Google Suite for the actual, emails that we occasionally have to use. So I'll start with the first question that I think is a fun one, which is how can you create a great culture when these people have never met? So for instance, one of my coworkers that's here today, I met her for the first time yesterday in person, right? And here she is doing our videography. So we've never met before. So the question is, how do you really create culture among people who don't really know each other? And for us, the answer is that we are able to replicate a lot of what happens in person virtually. Lots of tools are now available that we can do that. So Slack, we mentioned it fills many of our needs because things like sharing documents, that happens, but also informal things. So we're able to have office parties and we're able to have it online. We have, depending on the theme of the party, could be a dress-up party, we do that. We have the occasional beer or bring your own beer. It might not be beer, it might be coffee or tea or water or whatever you drink. But we do that. We have the end of your party. If someone is leaving, we have going away parties just the same. We also sometimes have games, office games, code names, and it works nicely that we have an LMS because we are a learning company. So we have our own platform, and sometimes we have like games, quizzes that we do online. And that helps us to kind of mimic the in-person aspect of being in an office. Another cool tool that is incorporated inside of Slack is that there's an app, it's an add-on, it's called Donut. And what Donut does is to randomly pair team members to just have a water cooler conversation. So we state like the parameters. Maybe we'll say, okay, every 2 months or every 3 months, pair someone with another random person just to talk about anything except work. They can talk about their kids, they can talk about what's happening in their life, 15 minutes, and they just have that water cooler conversation. We facilitate that, we encourage that, because it's not just about the job. In the same way that if people were in the same physical space, they'd be talking about stuff, right? So we want that to happen, and we feel that that's a part of culture. So those are things that we actively do to facilitate building team spirit and building culture. But for those of you who probably aren't managing a remote environment, you do know that culture gets built anyways. And sometimes culture is built organically, spontaneously, without you actively trying to do that. And we find that happened for us too. So there's something that we call it an emoji roll call. And what that is, it happened. No one told us to do it, it just started happening. Whenever there's a meeting, let's say there's 20 people scheduled for a meeting, the meeting is supposed to be at 3 o'clock. The first person who is available for the meeting, they drop an emoji of maybe how they're feeling or what's happening or something funny. And then as each person enters the room, they drop an emoji. So it's kind of funny. Sometimes we laugh about the emoji that someone chose, and Slack also allows people to build their own emojis and upload their own. So it's kind of hilarious sometimes, the stuff that takes place. And we were happy to see that because it showed us that people considered it a fun space enough for them to be able to kind of drop crazy stuff like that in. So you will find that if you are going remote, then you will see signs of culture being built. And what we've learned is things that we want to see, we accommodate and we facilitate. And then the stuff that we don't want to see, we kind of, try to weed it out. So the takeaway, let me just go right back here. Yeah, so the takeaway from this one is that we want people to be able eventually to organize social events for themselves. So we're not anti-physical connections. We do have some team members who work in the same country. We have a few folks in New Zealand, we have a few in Mexico, and in other places in Europe. So we do facilitate that even if they're not physically close to each other, when they are in the same area, they get together and they share, maybe they get to meet the family and stuff like that. So we're happy when that happens. Here is another question that we get asked literally all the time. And I'm sure that those of you who are thinking about going remote are thinking about this question, and it's a fair question. How do you know if people are doing the work? Because that's why they're there in the first place. Our answer to that is that maybe it's based on the type of business that we do, but we really don't care if they're working 8 hours or not. We don't require people to clock in and clock out. It's pretty easy to measure if they're doing the job because people get assigned work. And if they're doing the work, if they're meeting their deadlines, we don't care how long it took them to get it done. If they can do it in 4 hours, maybe that's their superpower, but we just want the work done. We do measure outcomes along the way. We don't just wait until a project fails and then we say this person wasn't doing the work. Some things that we do to make sure that this happens is we have weekly meetings. So first of all, we have one weekly meeting that's an all hands on deck. So everyone is really required to attend that one. And in that, we kind of measure where the projects are, where our targets are, whether we need more resources to get them done. But each team also has their individual team meetings that they attend. So project managers can basically touch base with their team to find out, do you need anything to get going? Is there anything you need from me? So in that way, we are managing and we are finding out if people are getting the work done. It's pretty easy to figure out if you're doing touch points with people on a weekly basis. So one of the things, it really does go back to trust, as trust that's mentioned here, which we start by hiring good people in the first place. And I'll go through the hiring process a little bit from this. But we trust that people aren't lazy and that they're here to do a good job and that they're getting the work done. So it's pretty easy to figure out through our meetings and through checking in if they're getting their job done. So the tools that we use to manage this, being able to figure out if the job is getting done, Trello, again, the project management tool, we can add people, those who are responsible, we add checklists to see when things are meeting schedule or not. We also use Slack for actual collaboration and communication, and we use the Google Drive to store the stuff, the work that we've done. How do we hire someone that we've never met? Well, a big part of that is trust too, but there is a process. And we have learned over the years, and we have refined this process in a way that we're basically comfortable with right now. Of course, we're always open to improvement, but we're happy with our hiring process right now. So it starts by us advertising on weworkremotely.com. We weren't always using that, and it kind of backfired that we didn't always use this, because the advantage with using We Work Remotely is that we don't have to sell the idea of working remotely to people. People are already looking for remote work. So before we were using this, we hired people who thought they would like working from home, thought it sounded really nice, but they had never actually worked remotely before. And it didn't always work out. Occasionally it did, but mostly it didn't. And so actually I have a story that I could share about that, which is that we hired this marketing manager that Bob knew through her network. He was a great marketer, he was excellent. And he thought going remote would be great for him because he had just started a new family, he had a newborn, and he figured, yeah, spending time at home would be great. Didn't work out. After just a few months, he decided to leave, and the reason he left was very unusual, but he said, actually, I missed the commute. I missed driving to work. He lived in New York City, and he missed driving to work in the mornings. He missed going for coffee or for lunch with his coworkers. He missed having an office, and that's okay. Remote work isn't for everyone. So we learned as we went along that it's not for everyone, and it's not a bad thing if people say, hey, I prefer to work from the office. So it probably also didn't help that he had a newborn. So it was a great loss for us, and it did set us back a little because he had great ideas, but none of them really got off the ground because after just a few months, you had to leave, we had to start all over again. So we really learned kind of the hard way that it's best to hire people who want to work remotely and who've probably done it before if you're hiring them in a position where they have a lot of responsibility. But as for the actual process, for those who are interested, so we post on weworkremotely.com. People who are interested, they apply. Lately, this has been a lot because now that remote work is a thing, it's a new thing, and many people have the technology at home to be able to do that. The most recent job that we hired for got 700 applications, and the one before that, for Maria's job, got 1,100 applications. So she's 1 in 1,000, guys. So it got very difficult to kind of manage that process. But we've learned, again, stuff that we can do to make it simpler. So first of all, we start with a type form. When we post it on We Work Remotely, we have this type form that people fill out. So we ask like standard questions, what kind of salary they're looking for, what's their time zone, different things like that. And they get to upload their resume. That gets dropped onto a Google Sheet, which we use Zapier to do that. So it drops as a zap. And that way we can easily create a shortlist. Now it's a 1,000 application list, so a shortlist is still pretty long. For that 1,000 applicants job, our shortlist was 100 people. So we realized we needed to create a shorter shortlist. So from that, we found an online tool called My Interview. And with that, we posted like maybe about 5 questions where they had to do a one-way interview, a video interview answering those questions. And from there, we created a shorter shortlist, maybe about 20, 25 people for whom we had actual face-to-face, virtual face-to-face interviews. And then we were able to do the hiring process probably that you're more familiar with. So the great thing with being able to do this remote type of casting this wide net is that we get great talent from anywhere. And that, we think, has made us really soar faster than we would have if we were just in one location. So we have great people from all over the world. They're super talented, but it does make the process a little more intense because we have more people to sort through. But it's worth it. We think it's kind of worth it. So the takeaway is that we feel that the hiring process can be very good if you decide to go remotely. We didn't have to use any expensive software, so My Interview was very flexible in the way you don't have to sign up for a whole year or anything. You sign up for, how much ever you need. And for We Work Remotely, that's also great. And we don't need any expensive ATS, software or recruiting software. We get to manage that all on our own. So that's fantastic. So the tools are, just as a recap, we use We Work Remotely, which we're able to use our type form, and then we get a zap where it's all collated on Google Sheets, and then we use My Interview to schedule the candidates. I didn't mention Calendly. Calendly helps because people are there from all over the world, so it helps us to kind of figure out the time zones in terms of when it's good for everyone. And then for the actual interview, we use Zoom. Okay, and so the last question, the time zones. We are in every imaginable time zone. Right now, most of my coworkers, they're probably just waking up. There are some people who are still fast asleep. We're never all at a convenient time. So the name of this presentation, the good, the bad, and the ugly, so far this is the ugliest that we've had to deal with, okay? And it won't get any better because of the way we've decided to do things. Some of you probably decide, okay, I'm hiring everyone from the same time zone and that's okay. We decided to go global. It hasn't been easy to manage this. One of the things that, for instance, that we had to work around was we make it very clear at the time of hiring that we have this one condition, which is that all hands on deck meeting, the one where everyone is required to attend. It's once a week. When we just started out, it wasn't that much of a problem because everyone was based in either New Zealand, Australia, or Hong Kong. So it was kind of easy to manage. But then there was someone that we got introduced to who we wanted to take on the team. She was living in Spain, and that would have clashed with the previous time zones. But we really liked her. We explained about that meeting, and that meeting would end up being like 3 a.m. her time. And she's like, no, absolutely, I'll make it. I'll be there every week. We said, all right, we took a chance. We kind of hesitant. We took a chance because she was so good. And she made the meetings every week, 3 a.m. But to be honest, like, that's not sustainable. How long would we keep her, right? She has other stuff to do. And so Bob, our CEO, she decided this is probably not the best way to get her up to speed on what we're doing. So we've been a bit more flexible where that's concerned. People still have to attend the meeting, but they can now, if they're in an outlier time zone, they can now attend it asynchronously. So Zoom is great for that because Zoom allows you to record your calls to the cloud. So those who we've determined are in outlier time zones who can't possibly attend the meetings because it's just not feasible, then they are required to attend the recorded call. So if you're there for 3 a.m., that's great, but we don't require it. And we feel that that's working for us so far. However, each department has their own weekly meeting that they're required to schedule. And they do try for all team members to be there live. And so that's a part of the hiring process too. When we hire, let's say we're hiring for someone from the marketing team, we tell you inside of that posting what time zone you're required to be in so that it ties in with your team members so that you can be there on that call. So we kind of aren't flexible where that's concerned. We try to make people who are on the same team work in the same time zone so that collaboration is easier. Or at least if they're not in the same time zone, it works. I'm in the North American time zone, but I do have team members who are in New Zealand. But that works because the time zones are so extreme that we tend to be able to meet at some point. So people might be attending one meeting for 7 a.m. for them, and someone is attending at 9 p.m., but that works, as long as they're okay with it. All right, so the takeaway is that we use, to schedule meetings, we use timeanddate.com. They have a meeting planner, and that helps you to see visually what time is it for everyone that you want to be on the call. I know that Google Calendar does that too, but I think Time and Date works better for us. And we also use Zoom to schedule the actual calls and to be able to record the calls and people can catch up on them later. We feel that that's really important just so that everyone knows where we are in the schedule. All right, so now it's time for any questions that you might have that maybe I didn't discuss in this presentation. Does anyone have any questions? So someone is coming around with a microphone.
Hi, thank you so much for that. I was really interested. So my question is, in terms of working from home, we've seen that actually, even though it's been quite flexible hours, people are almost having that idea that they always need to be on. They always need to make sure that their teams are on, and they're finding it more difficult to maybe have that work-life balance. So my question to you is, how do you guys sort of manage potential burnout or potential, employees just going a bit too overboard sometimes, just because it's difficult to switch off now with it being in your home?
That's a really good question, and we find that there's a tendency, because everyone wants to be sure that the boss doesn't think I'm slacking off, so I have to be available all the time. We found that it works with us setting a good example. So I feel like the leaders in the organization need to set a good example of saying, hey guys, I'm not available. It's the weekend, it's Sunday, I'm not available. Or, so there are very distinct lines, and we feel that makes all the difference. So if I'm on vacation, I'm just on vacation. I probably can't be reached. Can you reach out to so-and-so to get it done? And we think that applies to not only work-life balance, but other things too. People aren't going to be super motivated all the time either. So even that matter about being on for 8 hours a day, it's not realistic, especially if you're in a remote setting. No one is super motivated all the time, and it's less so when you are isolated. If you live alone, and especially if you're in lockdown like we were for so long, people aren't going to be motivated all the time. So we understand that we do have to be flexible, we do have to have a bit of empathy, and people have other lives outside of work. People got to go pick the kids up, or they have to go grocery shopping. And if someone at the daytime says, hey Claudia, I'm on the road, I'm at the grocery store now, like it's no big deal. I'm like, yeah, as soon as you get in, just let me know because we need to talk about X or Y. So in our company, that's totally okay. No one is frowned upon if they say, I'm on the road right now, give me an hour to get something done. So I hope that answers your question. I think it starts with the leadership, making sure that people understand that it's okay to not be on all the time. Any other questions? Sure.
First of all, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
I was just thinking, you've got 25 people in your company. Has it been more difficult to maintain that cultural piece and that kind of inclusion piece as the company's grown? And do you think there would be a tipping point whereby if you got to X amount of employees actually working virtually and trying to make sure everyone did feel included would become a lot more difficult and a lot more of a challenge?
So, good question. Yes, it's not as easy to manage 25 people as it was probably to manage 10. We do think that doing these virtual parties and get-togethers, it helps. And some of our get-togethers includes things like actual getting to know you stuff. So, for instance, I'll give you some ideas. You guys can tweak it the way you like. Maybe there's one where we posted baby pictures ahead of time, maybe like a week ahead of time, and say, this is a test, guys. Who is this, right? So that's one. Another one, we posted, people sent in pictures of their refrigerators. What's inside? And we say, guess whose refrigerator this is? So it's just little fun stuff. The one that we did most recently, that one was nice, where people were just something fun or a talent that you have, but no one knows who it is, and you had to do multiple choice. Who used to be a cheerleader? Who was this person? Who appeared in a game show? And we don't really know who it is, but then once we get the answer, when we do have the party and we get the answer, then that person tells us the backstory of what that thing is. So we feel that stuff like that does build culture, it does help people to get to know each other. And then when we add that with the donut, the water cooler conversation, it takes place really well. Another thing that we do, which I'm glad you brought up because I forgot to mention, was that, as I mentioned before, we're not anti-in-person. In fact, we endorse it. So every year, we do have a company retreat. So we did Thailand once, we did Maui. Next month, we're going to Costa Rica. Everyone is excited about that. So we do stuff like that to do team building because we feel that it's important to not only work together, but play together and know who your team members are. And we feel that each time that we have a retreat, it's going to make people just get stronger. Now, we don't know, we're still learning, it's 10 years, but we're still learning. We don't know if there's a cap. We don't know if there'll be a ceiling and we'll be like, this is diminishing returns now after, maybe 50 people. but it's still a work in progress, and we think we're doing great so far, and we're growing, and each time that we grow, like, people are excited to join us because we feel that we're really onto something great here. And the gray shirt, thanks.
Thank you very much for the presentation. My question is that how do you manage the whole process, let's say, legally and trusting, people that you didn't see? I mean, let's say you hire people on the 20th of the month, and maybe they would just take the salary and leave, or how do they trust you also from the other side? So building this kind of trust that, it's difficult to sue. I mean, if it is in a different country.
Yes, very good. We have, to be honest, we already have a very good reputation. So we find that most people trust us. But it wasn't always like that. So when we started, GoSkills was hiring everyone as independent contractors. So in the same way that you would treat a contractor, I think there are other companies like this that would basically, you would hire someone as a service provider, and they provide a service and then you pay them. So we ask people to send in an invoice on a date, the 20th of the month, they send in the invoice, and then we pay them by the end of the month. Everyone is guaranteed to be paid by the end. And so that's how it started. And that method has worked very well because not everyone, like legally, there are too many countries to try to manage. So those who are in the country where we're registered are considered employees, but those who aren't are considered independent contractors. But we provide better than what an independent contractor would get. So we provide additional benefits that we're not legally required to provide, but we want people to understand that we believe in doing good and being good, so we expect the same. And especially since we are hiring people from this remote website, we work remotely, they see when they've got a good thing. Like, people don't want to give it up. So we feel that by doing good, people will want to stay, and we'll be able to trust them in the same way that they trust us. I think that's our time. So I just want to say, if you want to find out more about us, go to our website. It's GoSkills.com. Pretty easy to remember. If you are thinking of getting an LMS or getting your team trained in anything, we have a really cool LMS. You can check it out on the website. But if you do want to try it out, talk to our support team. You can just email support@GoSkills or info@GoSkills, and if you mention the business show, you'll get 20% off. All right. You'll be able to download the slides for this presentation by using this QR code. Or if you don't use the QR code, just go to GoSkills.typeform, told you we like typeform.com/work-from-home. And you'll be able to get the slides here. And we'd really like you to follow us on socials. We have cool advice and lots of what I mentioned here today. We wrote as blog articles anyway, so you'll be able to get it from our resources. Thanks, guys. You've been an amazing audience. Enjoy the rest of your day.